It's hard for me to comprehend where Judas was coming from. Because if you think about the story of Judas, once again, we don't know a lot about him. What we do know, one thing I found out this week, is that he was the only disciple not from Galilee or around Galilee in the northern area. He was actually from Judah in the south, so maybe he was always the outcast. Maybe he was always the one that never quite fit in. I don't know, but what I do know is this, that he was with Jesus for 3 years. In all the things that we've looked past over the last year and a half, if we studied the book of Matthew, he saw with his own eyes. He saw every single miracle. He saw when Jesus turned the water into wine. You would have thought that made him think, like, hey, maybe there's something here. Like he saw whenever there was 5,000 men plus their families, or there's 15, 20,000 people out in the field out there, and they didn't have any food. And Jesus said, hey, is there any food? And one little boy came up and said, I got a couple fish and a few loaves. And Jesus fed 20,000 people. Like, Judas saw that. He saw it. He saw whenever there was a little child that was sick, the Roman centurion's child, and Jesus was able just to say the word, and the Roman centurion said, you're powerful enough. The Roman knew that he was powerful enough that Jesus just said the word, even though he's miles away, that he could heal him, and he did. Judas saw that. He saw he was in the boat. He was in the boat whenever the storm was raging, and Jesus was in the back of the boat, sound asleep, and they were all thinking they were going to die. Judas probably also thought that he was about ready to die, and he might have been the very one that opened up, that said, Jesus, save us, save us. And Jesus stood up and said, peace, be still. And it calmed the sea, and it calmed the winds. Jesus saved his life. He saw it. He experienced it. That very night, he was at a table, potentially sitting across the table from Lazarus, the man that he just saw Jesus raise up from the dead a couple days before. He saw that this man had power over life and death. He saw it with his own eyes. And after 3 long years of where he probably had countless times where he would look Jesus in the face and he could see the love of Jesus in his eyes that Jesus had for Judas. After 3 years, he said, you know what? I'll betray him for a few $1,000. I got a little sin in my heart that he didn't think anybody else knew about. Jesus knew the whole time. Don't for a second think that if Judas would have just come and repented and said, Jesus, I'm sorry, I have something to tell you. Don't think for a second Jesus would have just said, I know, Judas, come here, I love you, I forgive you. But he had that sin in his heart that whole time that he loved more than Jesus. As we go on, as we'll see, as we finish off the story, he takes that 30 pieces of silver. And when he sees what happens to Jesus, he says, I betrayed an innocent man. And he threw it back into the temple as dirty blood money. Here's what keeps me up awake as your pastor, as a pastor of anybody, is that if I truly, truly believe if Judas could have sat there for 3 years and saw all of that with his own eyes, he saw it, he felt it. How many of us come to church for decades upon decades where we still got that little sin that we still love more than Jesus? See, Judas, he was sent out just like all the other apostles, wasn't he? Whenever Jesus empowered them, he went out, he preached the gospel. No doubt he saw people being saved under his ministry, and yet he still didn't even know Jesus.